productive. Want to try to push towards the end of this and talk a little bit about the DNA, right? The DNA and what it actually means and what it doesn't mean. Now, I've said it many times, but his DNA, his genes, his house, Sophia and Jesse's DNA on it. Dr. Wright told you, relatives share DNA, we got it. Does that change, though, the cross-examination of Dr. Wright? And how he indicated that many of these samples conclusively and reliably showed that the victim's DNA were on his clothes that he tried to destroy. That allele sharing argument, the question marks in the one column with Corey, it's just desperation and another attempt at betraying another member of his family. There's the knife, and this was recovered. As you'll recall, you can see the state of it now. Detective Vogt testified about how it was found in the foyer area, right? Kind of in an area that had been kind of, not necessarily dug out, but kind of collected in that area. And you'll recall that that's the area where Jennifer Canero was found. Remember those pictures? She had a little yellow blanket that they put on top of her, right at the top of the stairs that go down to the basement. And then her daughter is up the stairs on the landing. And that knife, obviously they didn't put the knife into that block in the kitchen, right? Because they didn't want to contaminate or transfer any evidence. But you could see, and you heard the testimony, that that knife came from Keith Canero's own kitchen. The knife that at least took part in the murder of Jennifer Canero, and took part in at least, because you don't necessarily know if that's the only knife that was used, right? That's the knife that was found. You don't know, potentially, if he left with another knife. I mean, you know from the testimony in this case, you brought out that black bag with Detective Catalona. You walked it up here, and we didn't really open it up and show you everything in it. Really no need. You saw some pictures in one of those drawers that was over by the metal gun locker in Mr. Paul Canero's house. By all the guns. There's a bunch of knives in there. But obviously at some point, he has to turn to another weapon. They're arguing that because there's a gun and because there's a knife, there's two people. But what evidence of there is that? You saw the garage camera, right? That's 15, 16 minutes of footage that shows one person. It's like he has a ton of bullets and all that kind of stuff, and he would have brought enough bullets. What if, for instance, he was just going to shoot everybody once? Or, he obviously could have shot Keith Canero once. I mean, one bullet, at the end of the day, would have killed Keith Canero. That one last shot on the jacket with the gunshot residue, and you heard from Judith Link from the state police, that cruciform tear, which is consistent with the gun firing against the fabric and causing that tearing, that was enough. So the fact that maybe he didn't quite bring enough ammunition, does that mean there's two people involved? I mean, presumably, he had a magazine. We don't know which magazine he used, because he had hundreds of magazines in his house. But we know how many bullets were found, right? We know how many bullets were found, and we'll talk about that when we get to the ballistics, but we're going to go to DNA. Now, again, importantly, because they did a lot to try to, I don't want to say denigrate, but they were trying to point out things about likelihood ratios and mixtures and things like that with the Bodie and with the Star Mix. You heard about Star Mix and how 90 plus labs in the United States are using it now. State police got it in 2022. That's why we went to Bodie. And, state police was actually kind of behind the game like because of COVID, and a lot of labs have it, and basically 80%, I think they said, of labs in the United States are using it. But like, put that aside for a second, because that's just a way, like Dr. Reich said, is that like, he see, majority of what he sees as a DNA analyst is mixtures. So mixtures are common. So like, when you see like, you know, they test something and there's two contributors, and maybe there's just like a little bit of the second one, there's not enough there, it's a mixture. That's what StarMix is able to do. And like comparing numbers, like, you know, Sophia's 8 sextillion or whatever, likelihood ratio, like, that's great, right? I mean, that's very probative. That's her DNA. But like in that one sample, the defendant in that mixture might only be like 400,000. But that's also because, as you heard, there's something called like average peak heights and RFU and all that stuff, and I'm not going to get into the weeds. But like basically you have two contributors, and one of them just, there's not a lot of that DNA in that mixture, but it's there. And StarMix is able to actually opine on mixtures better than like really humans can. And that's why StarMix exists. But, you know, it was brought up that like StarMix doesn't give you a yes and no answer. Well, random match probabilities don't give you a yes or no answer anyway. DNA does not give you a yes or no. It basically says with an RMP that, you know, like in a hypothetical population of 1 million people, like I asked Dr. Wright, you would expect to find this profile one time. That's like how rare it is. So we look at sample 6-1-4-1, which is the right front shin of the genes. Right front shin is one of these samples over here. That was actually tested by the state police, and ultimately they generated one of those random match probabilities. One of the ones I think they intimated are more accurate. I would submit to you that they're all accurate. It's DNA. You know, it's just DNA is DNA. It doesn't lie. It doesn't tell you where it came from or who put it there, but it doesn't lie. It's just that sometimes, given the amount of DNA in a particular area, because remember, we're talking about one of these little white cuttings, we're talking about a small area, because you don't just like throw the genes in a conveyor belt and it comes out and says, you know, this is all Sophia, this is all Jesse. You have to sample different parts of it. When we talk about Jesse's DNA, they said ultimately that Jesse's DNA, or Jesse was the source of the DNA on the right front shin of these genes. And when you talk about how rare that is, right, that's really what they're trying to tell you when they give you that answer. They said that he was the source. And what they need to call something the source from their protocol, their their standard operating procedures and analytical thresholds and things like that, is that the RMP has to be greater than 1 in 7 trillion. So in a population of 7 trillion people, which is actually a lot bigger than the amount of people that have ever walked the face of the earth, you would expect to find that profile once. Jesse's DNA, Paul Canaro's genes. Now, we talked about a scraping from the inside collar of a shirt, one of the shirts that's in that pile. DNA profile is approximately 100 million times more likely to occur if H1 is true, which is basically that Paul Canaro is contributor 1 to that sample. So, like I said, we learned quickly that Sophia, that Jesse was a little later, but we learned quickly that several areas on those genes had Sophia Canaro's DNA. So that's quickly. So like that's, again, like before we start digging into finances and all that kind of stuff, we see his car leave, come back, and then they find, well, the dog hits, the cadaver dog, hits on the scent of human remains, and lo and behold, the state police tells us that's Sophia Canaro's blood. Follow the evidence. Same way they told us early on that her DNA was on the handle, which tells you that that's the knife that was thrust into multiple areas of her body. So when we talked about some of the StarMix evidence, some of the DNA that was tested by Bodie. We talk about sample. I think Dr. Reich in his PowerPoint, he had three samples he talked about. The first was E01A1, which is, I've said it many times, but it's the inside of the genes above the knee, right? It's kind of like wearing DNA. Like, you know, that's where you get things when you move, and you walk, and you shed. Now, when he talked about it, he was like pointing out different things, and I'm not sure why he chose that sample, because it's very probative, A, and B, it's extremely conclusive. But what he didn't tell you is that contributor 1 was Sophia Canero with a likelihood ratio of 470 sextillion. That number doesn't just come out of the blue, that's science. And then contributor 2 was Paul Canero with a likelihood ratio of 3.7 quintillion. And when I asked Dr. Reich on cross-examination, are those reliable results? Sophia's results and the likelihood ratio, Paul Canero's results and the likelihood ratio. Is that reliable? And he said, yes. E01C1, another area on the genes. This is the exterior front right thigh. So up here, Sophia Canero, single source right here. He was saying, oh, you know, you could do a random match probability. I guess you could. But I think he said that the number would actually probably, interesting that he said that. He said if you did a random match probability on that number, 2.1 septillion, I think basically what he said is that it should be about the same, i.e. they're both pretty accurate. And that likelihood ratio is 2.1 septillion. Again, all numbers, when we put them in context, are bigger than the amount of people that are on the earth today, 80 billion we heard, and the number forever is about 100 billion. Again, Dr. Reich, this is reliable. I asked him specifically, is that a reliable result? Yes. E02B1, interior of glove 1. I know we saw the 6 gloves. Contributor 1, Sophia Canero. LR of 1 septillion. Dr. Reich, that's okay. That's reliable, right? Nothing wrong with that. E03A1, glove 2, exterior. Contributor 1, 59%. Likelihood ratio of 100 quadrillion. Then we got to contributor 2, Paul Canero, 41%. LR of 45 quadrillion. That's actually like not, it's kind of like it's not an equal, it's not a 50-50 mixture, but like it's more Sophia, but there's a lot of Paul in there, right? And Dr. Reich, when asked by me, said, those conclusions are reliable. It's their expert saying that. E03B1, glove, interior, and they acknowledge, I think all the DNA people acknowledge that, like, we don't necessarily know which is the inside, which is the outside of those gloves. Like, it's just kind of impossible to tell. It's the way they came to it. However they got the glove, they treated the exterior as the exterior, interior as the interior. But quite frankly, there's results on those gloves from interiors and exteriors that are very probative, so I would submit to you that, like, he gloved up. He gloved up. You saw it on the video. He gloved up because he didn't want to leave anything. Now the car's so clean. Sophia, 97% of that mixture, 980 sextillion. Dr. Reich says there's nothing wrong with that result. Glove 4 exterior, Sophia Canero, 94%. LR of 726 sextillion. Nothing wrong with that result. Glove 5, Sophia Canero, you get the point. 870 sextillion. I mean, a bunch of this stuff went out together. Probably didn't need to test all these areas of all these gloves. But I mean, consistently, you're finding that Sophia Canero's blood is on these genes. E06B1 at the glove. And here we see contributor 1 this time, 58%, is Paul Canero with an LR of 49 billion. Sophia Canero, 42%, 19 quadrillion. No issue with either result from Dr. Reich, who was asked by, who was testifying on behalf. E10A, this is a swab from the lower kitchen cabinet. This is one of the ones we talked about. This is the one where it's Jesse's blood at the bottom, and Sophia is down there clearly bleeding in the kitchen, but not where she was found dead. Not dead. But the two of them contribute to the blood on that lower cabinet. It's telling in that these are extremely probative DNA results. They're very reliable based upon the testimony that you heard from even their expert. But it's very probative, like, what the hell was happening in the dark in the kitchen. E11, this is a underneath the pull-out drawer near the sink, Sophia's DNA. And E12D, this was actually early DNA. This was like before we went to Bodie. And when we looked at that scarf, ultimately you saw the testimony that there was a bunch of defects in the scarf. And there was also, I think, 3 hairs. When you look at defects here, it's hard to tell a little bit, but there's some holes in here, which are consistent with knives. Like the blade of a knife, maybe holding the scarf around your hand, the gloves, because at some point this scarf is in Colt's neck, and at some point this scarf ends up with strands of hair, longer strands of hair from a late 8-year-old Sophia Canaro. And when they tested this, the random match probability, meaning in a population of 14 octillion people, you would expect to find that DNA profile one time. E13 was, well, that was a scraping. Let me be clear, just so the record's clear. That was a scraping of the scarf. Once they took the hairs off, they scraped it to try to get a cross-section of, see if they get any DNA off it. And ultimately what they came up with on that was Sophia Canaro. That was the 1 in 14 octillion. The hairs, we have E13, E14, they're 2 hairs, and the results in a population of 4.1 octillion or 34 septillion, you'd expect to find that one time. We talked about 61-4-1, that's Jesse's DNA. Dr. Reich says that's reliable. This is what we look at. We're looking at the Bodie chart. And, you know, I think there was one sample that I asked him about Mr. Canaro's DNA, and it was the one time he tried to kind of, I'm not sure if that's reliable, I'm not sure. And then I showed him a transcript, and we kind of resolved that he has said in the past that that is reliable. Their DNA expert concedes Sophia's DNA is on the jeans, it's on the scarf with defects, it's on the glove. All items from the defendant's basement. They're all reliable according to the defense DNA expert. He concedes Paul's DNA inside the jeans, we talked about it, and on 3 different nitrile gloves, black nitrile gloves, just like the one seen on the hand in the video at 2:35 to 2:51 outside 15 Willowbrook, next to the electrical panel. He says those LRs of 45 quadrillion, 200 million, and 49 billion are reliable results. You can see it's Jesse's DNA. So what we know is that Jesse, Sophia, and Paul all contributed to DNA on the jeans. Sophia's DNA is on the scarf, the hair. Sophia and Paul are on the gloves. This was played for you during the course of trial. It's Paul Canaro having a conversation with the office manager, and it kind of relates to partially.
Tell her, please. I never needed her any more than I need her now.
I know, and it really, you know, the stability was not really the main thing. It was, you know, the fear.
Tell her, don't worry about it. They got what they wanted. I'm here.
So, in December of 2018, after he's charged, he's trying to get a former employee to come back and run the business. Like, that's what he's worried about on December 5th, 2018, despite the fact that he's facing murder charges. His brother's dead, sister-in-law, Jesse and Sophia. But what Tiffany's saying on that phone call is that Larissa, the other employee, doesn't want to come back because she's scared. And what Mr. Canaro says is, there's nothing to be scared of. I'm here. Doesn't say, because you heard some testimony that like Corey worked with the business to try to keep it running after the fact. Doesn't say. What he doesn't say is kind of telling, and it's kind of probative of really who did this. It's a little thing again, but he doesn't say like, be careful, Corey's showing up at the business. Like, that's what you got to worry about. He's saying, don't worry, there's nothing to be afraid of. Because they're worried that like someone's out there. Keith's dead, Paul had a fire. They don't know the whole story yet. Nobody does, because we're still working on it. Don't be afraid of Corey, who's at the business every day. They got what they wanted. I'm here. Again, this comes back to, because that was December 5th, so we're in the midst of the investigation. Because like I said, this stuff it doesn't appear, okay? This is effort. This is investigation. This is seizing items and sending them places to get tested to try to see. You don't know what you're going to find when you send ballistics to the ballistics lab. You don't know what the answer is going to be. You don't know what the DNA people are going to tell you. So you're in the midst of that. But then when you start to get those results, does it tell you anything other than Paul Canaro did this? Again, this is just something I wanted to show because we talked about it earlier, but when you look at the rear and where the fire started, right in here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's just the context of what Dr. Gould's camera is showing you. Just so you can understand that, like, you did see the origin of the fire. You did see when it started. And you might have missed the very beginning of this, you know, the lighting. Obviously, wish it was that light. Maybe you would have saw someone walk across. But it was dark out because it's 5 o'clock in the morning. This is the fire. This is the point of origin. The DNA is right inside there. And this line right here, if I had the picture, you'll have it, but John Lightbody, who did the origin and cause, he testified about a picture that's in this living room over here, right here. And you could see there was some like crown molding. It's kind of like up here. It's like some crown molding here. And there's like just like this, there's almost like a pillar where you transition from the family room to the dining room. And Lightbody said, yeah, right here you can see. This is where the fire was going, right? And it kind of got knocked down. But like, if this fire doesn't get knocked down, like, it's already in the basement. You can see down here, it's below ground. I mean, it's trying to hit that evidence, right? It's really trying to destroy that DNA. Just didn't. I mean, I don't know if the fire could have eventually destroyed the guns too. I mean, maybe we would have gotten that evidence, but it's pretty easy. That fire keeps going to destroy genes. I mean, look at what it did to it. Look at what it caused. It caused that, and then it caused that over here, what we talked about yesterday, with the rest of the genes. We talked about this yesterday, but it's just like things that are brought up, and then all of a sudden, like, we give you some context, like Lieutenant Petrozello testifying about how, like, yeah, we did check that camera. Like, you know, it was always like, you guys didn't check this, you guys didn't check that. Then all of a sudden, it's like he testified, he's like, no, it's not like a Willowbrook address or like a, whatever, drawing a blank on Dr. Volstein's street, but just to the left. But the house back behind Willowbrook, like up in the back, it's actually, the address is actually Route 34, because that's how close Route 34 is. And ultimately, talk about cameras, but the car that you see in Colts Neck before, on its way, leaving, like, we know what direction that's going, right? We know that's, I would suggest that based upon this and even the timeline they're trying to offer to you, that's the Macan. So, like, I'm not sure why, even though they did check cameras on Route 34 and other places. However, you know, in the middle of the night, it's not always that easy on Route 18 to see what kind of car it is driving through a particular location. But I think the testimony stands on its own. But the point being is that he did look, right? That is a relevant camera. That camera, had it been closer to 15 Willowbrook, I mean, they're big properties, so it's kind of like a little different than, you know, Mr. Canero's property and the Oxford. Very nice houses, right? Nice piece of property, but they're closer. So the cameras are gonna be more probative. But here, I mean, it would have been great if we saw the car park. I mean, it would have been the McCann. But like, he parked over there for a reason. He wasn't trying to be on camera. Like, he may go to Keith's house a lot, but he doesn't necessarily ever contemplate the idea that like Catherine Lucchese across the street has cameras. I mean, that's a big property too. Pretty set back, and that's obviously why the footage is kind of had to be pieced together by virtue of like tail lights and different things. And timing, because it makes sense, and that's his car. We talked about the phone. I mean, just the reality, and I don't know, I said it yesterday, but I'll say it very briefly again, but the phone, I don't understand exactly how the phone does anything to tell you that all the evidence that points to Mr. Canero does anything other than point to Mr. Canero and prove that he's guilty. But again, just the context of what Jennifer would have been doing. I mentioned before, like, we don't know if maybe she even went outside and got chased in. We don't really know because the cameras were cut, the power was cut. But whatever happened, ultimately, she was killed inside. She was shot, she was stabbed. Just like her son, her daughter were stabbed. So I said this yesterday, but obviously there's some reason for concern. She's gonna leave her bedroom, she's gonna do it quickly. Whether Keith's gone trying to figure out the power, she hears the gunshots, whatever the case may be. She's not necessarily grabbing her phone and calling 911. I mean, obviously there's a lot of chaos going on. Clearly, didn't sound like there was a lot of time to react. You know, maybe she's just more worried about trying to protect Jesse, trying to protect Sophia. Maybe her instinct was just to help, and that her phone's upstairs, and that she's got a gun pointed at her, got a bullet that's about to be in her brain. Because this is what's going on. This is Jennifer's body. Remember when before the detectives, they wanted to protect the integrity of the scene and the investigation, and Detective Cordoma, Detective Vogt, Big Lieutenant Mueller go in and take the body out, and Detective Flanagan, who took a lot of the photos, Detective Cordoma told you, he took a lot of the early photos. He was like the first guy there from forensic. And you could see the depths of the fire in the back of the house. Like, you got a real sense, which Cordoma said was very helpful. Seeing the the path, and the evolution of the fire was very important to where it started. Because it wasn't always a certainty of where it started. I think it started in that cedar closet. I didn't put the video in here, but one of the interesting things that you can see from Patrolman Mazzicola, his MVR, his camera in his police car. Remember, he pulls up to the front of the house, and there's a point in time his camera's just running, where he goes over to where Keith is, and Dr. Volstein's over there, and then another officer comes, and Mazzicola and Miyakawa, the two officers, they go around the side, because that door is open. Remember, kind of where that one live round is found? On that southwest patio, there's an open door, and they find that door open, right? I think I said it yesterday. And obviously, they looked at that area to see if there's any fingerprints or anything, but that's kind of the way he went out. And that's probably just about the best way to get out when you're trying to get to your car. You're trying to do it quickly. But on that, once Mazzicola and Miyakawa, the other officer, they go around, you can actually see, well, first you see Dr. Dr. Goldstein opened that door and smoke. And then they actually opened the camera, the door where the camera would have shown them opening the door, but the power was cut at 2:52. But Mazzicola opens it, and you see the smoke come out by the garage. But during the course of that body-worn camera footage, one of the guys, his name's Sergeant Savage, walks across the front while the other officers are over on the side. And like, when you look at the front of the house, all of a sudden, for the first time during during that body-worn, there's like a little area on the bottom of the house where you see the flame. And it's like to the left of the door. It's real low. It's the first time you see any flames. All you saw was smoke in the front of the house. Flames were in the back. But that was like exactly where the fire had eventually pierced that cedar closet. Because it's coming up and out, and it's just right there on the bottom. It just tells you visually that that origin, you know, was right. The area of origin being the cedar closet, because that's exactly where it would have been. You saw the floor plans and the surveys. So it's just interesting to know. So again, we're just talking about what's going on. You know, why maybe she didn't take her phone. I'm not gonna, you saw what you saw. This is just an x-ray which just shows, obviously confirming gunshot wounds to the head of Jennifer Canero. That's all I can show you. That's all you need to see. Just talking about that blood, this is the foyer. What's going on in that house at 3:30 in the morning? Sophia running into the kitchen. And then we got Jesse, right? Coming around to where he's ultimately going to take his last smoke-filled breaths. And we got, this is the one where it's Jesse and Sophia. Like, who would have thought? Just think about it. Sophia's in the kitchen and she's already bleeding. So she's already been attacked. But she's there, and there's only really one way to look at it. You can judge for yourself, for sure. Like, she's got to be, like, checking on her brother. But then she runs out of the kitchen, up the stairs, onto the landing. And that's where Carmelo Lamarco, the firefighter, ultimately found her. That's what Zane told you, that, like, she was left alive. Alive. 49% carboxyhemoglobin. Kind of a man. And then lastly, this is probably, you know, we can't say conclusively, Cordoma kind of explained it as best you could, but like, you see the swipes and all that, he told you about that, but like, this is now going east in the house towards where you exit the kitchen and you go up the stairs, and she would have passed her mom lying there on the ground. Her mom ultimately suffered fatal injuries so that she didn't inhale smoke. Jesse did. Sophia did to another level. This is the wound to Jesse's chin that we talked about. And you know there's just, I didn't show you the picture, but you'll have all the pictures, but you know that right in that area of the kitchen, the islands here, kitchen cabinets are here, right over here is like the windows. They find a projectile right here. Remember, they found the casing over by Jennifer, by the stairs. This is, I'm not going to show you anymore. This is just showing you the sharp force injuries through her shirt. I think she was wearing like shirt and like underwear, obviously sleepwear. I'm not going to show you any other photos. You saw what you needed to see. It's horrific. But the reality is, we all know it's horrific. Cause and manner of death is part of any murder case. Have an obligation to prove cause and manner of death beyond a reasonable doubt, like every other element. But at the end of the day, the question becomes, who did it, right? Who did it? And at the end of the day, beyond a reasonable doubt, but beyond any doubt, the person responsible for inflicting those minutes, moments of terror in the dark upon children that trusted him. God only knows what they were saying to him. Paul Canaro. Just the hair and the scarf. And when we talk about the injury, like, the only evidence of injury at 27 Tilby, only evidence of injury upon that house or in that house, despite the testimony from Caitlin Canaro, was really just that one area of blood, which was swabbed, and it was actually the firefighter. And I don't know if it was on the, he was being treated at the scene, but obviously it was confirmed that Sean Edson, the firefighter, hit his hand, or cut his hand, or whatever it was, on the doorway, or hit it up, or rubbed it on the doorway at some point to cause the blood, which was his. But let's talk about that injury, like this injury. Like, he told the police he injured his hand, so I mean, I don't think, to be honest with you, I'm not sure he really could have hid that from the police being there at the police station and outside for a lot of the day. I don't think he really could have hid it, so he told them that. But then in trial, all of a sudden, kind of like his daughter, who didn't tell the police this, I mean, Miss Wallace asked her that, says that she was actually like heard something. She didn't see it. She didn't see her dad hit his hand, but he was behind her as they're going down the stairs trying to get out of the house, and he said, "Fuck, my hand," or something to that effect. I would suggest that, like, not wearing shoes, shutting off the cameras and all that kind of stuff, that's just like, just trying to come up with an excuse for an injury that is entirely consistent with bludgeoning 3 people inside a house about an hour earlier. I would suggest to you that when you look at all of the evidence, all the stuff we talked about, that injury happened in Colts Neck. Sophia's injury, I mean, you heard them, there's 17, I'm not gonna run through them. There's really no reason. You saw a couple photos, that's really what you could see. But we're talking about all over the body. But I think when we talk about this, we have to put into context that DNA again with Jesse and Sophia. And the fact that, like, Jesse never left the kitchen. He's bleeding there. He never left there. He died there. Sophia's bleeding. She leaves there. And Dr. Zane told you about all those injuries that were consistent with defensive wounds. It was like, it was in a report and he testified to it. He said injuries, like he listed like 6 or 7 of the 17 sharp force injuries that he believed, and you saw the leg and hands and shit, forearm and all that kind of stuff. But like, that little girl fought. I mean, nothing else I can say. That little girl fought. Again, I'm not going to show you photos because I'm not going to do that to you, But like, this is just like Dr. Zhang, like notes of just, what else can you say other than how much writing is on that chart, that diagram? I mean, you don't need to see blood, you don't need to see cuts. It's just, look at the writing. It doesn't even matter what it says, it's just a lot of writing. I won't say it again. You know that 49%, you know what Dr. Zhang said it meant. I mean, Michael Abraham, the guy from the ATF, the electrical engineer, he told you about the Verizon OT line. He told you about the generator. He told you about he was brought in because he's an expert. He's an electrician who works for the ATF. And ultimately, he assisted with determining, what the power meant in conjunction with the fire. And ultimately, what he determined was that there was no power. The home was de-energized at the time of the fire because he cut all the power. And he cut all the cameras. This is the Verizon ONT line, which was cut. I'm sure you remember that. This is a line that was purposely and knowingly cut so that no help would come. No smoke alarm would be triggered, no alerts to the outside world. This is what we have. This is the shell casing. This is the live round. Or no, sorry, this is shell casing. Shell casing. All Fiocchi, very rare ammunition. So rare, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot of cross-examination about it. So rare that Sergeant Clayton said they have thousands of different types of ammunition at the state police. But they needed the prosecutor's office to bring them this, because I hope you understood it. But just because it's the same ammunition here in Colts Neck and here in defendant's basement, doesn't mean that that ammunition is going to mark the same in any gun. It's not going to be a match with any gun because it's the same ammunition. The point is, they want to use, Sergeant Clayton told you, they want to use like ammunition because it marks better. You want to use, he said, I think it said it's longer, right? But it's good to see the markings so that you can make very reliable and conclusive comparisons between items. But again, ammunition that's rare enough that the state police didn't even have it. This is what they do every day. But Paul Canero has it. And it's exactly what's found in Colts Neck. This was brought up yesterday. You know, why would he use a knife if he had a gun? Now, I think I explained this morning, but, you know, I don't know that I can ever answer it. One of the things the judge will tell you is that, like, we can't get into the head of someone. You're going to be asked, and you're going to be read the law about state of mind, and that when you talk about murder, you're talking about purposely and knowingly, or purposely or knowingly causing death or serious bodily injury resulting in death. But one of the things the judge will tell you, I suspect, is that we can never get inside someone's head, right? So we don't know exactly why someone always does things. But I would suggest that when we talked about there was the southwest corner, there's a live round right by where that door was open, right? Now, that live round was ultimately compared to other shell casings that Clayton tested, and we'll get there almost. And that round wasn't fired, it's a live round, so it kind of looks basically this. It is this, same hit stamp, but it was extracted from the same handgun as the other casings. So you match casings to the gun and bullets, fired bullets, to the barrel. But the extractor marks and the ejection marks were the same as all the other cartridges. So this round that was found right by where that door was found open in the back corner of the house, Mr. Canero probably went in and probably left. It's the same as all the other cartridge casing. And the reason why it's there, I asked Sergeant Clayton, is that really either there's a malfunction or he forgot that he racked the gun already and there's a bullet in the chamber. And so when he racks it again, it pops out. So it ejects, but it doesn't fire because he doesn't pull the trigger. So it's there. It's from the same gun. It's just another piece of ballistic evidence when you look at the numbers, because there's 6 shots outside. There's 2 shots that we know of in the house because we have a casing in one area, and then we have a bullet in the other in the kitchen. There's 1 round on the southwest, I think I said southeast, the southwest patio. And then we also later found, interestingly, we found out the state police actually told us in these jeans, when they were sent for testing, and that pile was sent for testing, ultimately New Jersey State Police item 6-4 actually got like 6 think it's the same number as the jeans, so they kind of like found that. Same headstand, Fiocchi ammunition in the pile. I think where they found it was the pocket of the jeans, but your recollection will control. But it's another piece of ballistic evidence linking the guns to Balconero, the DNA to Balconero, ballistics and the DNA to Balconero. But again, we're talking about 10 shots. I mean, there could have been a 10-round magazine. Could have ran out. Could have been more than that. Could have missed Keith a couple of times. They were never found because they would have flown out to Willowbrook. I don't know. But at some point during that interaction with Jesse and Jennifer and Sophia, you know a knife is used. Just because he had a gun and a knife doesn't mean that it's anyone other than Falconer. So, when we talk about the state police ballistics, we first talk about 5 bullets. We talk about these 5 bullets. State police numbers 11, 12, 17, 20, and 26. Its evidence number is 302, 304, 309, 325, 331. So basically, ladies and gentlemen, what you heard from Chris Clayton, an expert in ballistics, is that any bullet that wasn't damaged enough or mutilated, like he testified, those ones that were found in the water, Jennifer's brain and Keith's brain, anything that was remotely intact, matched this barrel that was found in Keith's backpack, Paul's backpack. This is, just so we realize, this is actually the live round from the southwest corner. Okay, this is the one that, although it wasn't fired, it matches all the projectiles, all the shell casings. So these bullets fired from this barrel found in Mr. Canero's backpack. Now we have 7 shell casings from Willowbrook. Exhibit S 305, 306, 307, 308, 311, 312, 326. All these casings. Well, first, let's just say that he was able to determine first that these bullets were all fired from the same gun. You saw the pictures, right? It's basically pattern comparing, and we showed you the photos that show that the patterns match. And obviously, based upon his testimony, based upon his expertise, testifying, I think, 60-something times, been doing this for years at the state police, these bullets all matched each other. And then he drew a comparison of these projectiles, of these shell casings, and said they all match. Before he did the barrel and the gun. But ultimately, based upon test firing, comparison of test standards to the bullets, this barrel, Falconero's backpack, fired these bullets, caused the death of Keith Canero and Jennifer Canero. Remember, he swapped the barrel out, right? But ultimately, it is safe. We've said that a number of times, got the gun lock. So, obviously, this is something we treat with care. Okay? This is S-193. It's recovered from the defendant's basement in that locked gun storage locker. We treat it with care, and we point it down, and we make sure it's safe. Because at the end of the day, while it's lawful to possess this weapon legally, right? But this thing's a beast. You know, these have lawful uses, certainly. People use them for sport and to practice, and that's fine. But you talk about matching shell casings from a crime scene where 4 people are murdered to this. You gotta treat this with care because this thing takes lives. And this, and this, and these, and these, they're why we're here. That gun from his basement and that barrel from his backpack, separated carefully, meticulously, purposely, fired these bullets and expelled these shell casings. It's somewhere between 326 and 330. And then he went into that house and he caused the rest of the carnage. This is, ladies and gentlemen, that is, and this is, and this is, and this is, and this is, and those jeans are, and it's shutting off the cameras, and all the footage we have of him leaving in the middle of the night, coming back in the middle of the night, 2 hours later. That is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. We ask you, as jurors, to hold us to proving this case beyond a reasonable doubt. When we say reasonable, right? Like, you know, they may point out that this wasn't done or this wasn't done, but like, you also have to hold us to a reasonable standard as to like, what more can we give you? We gave you the gun, gave you the barrel, the projectiles, the bullets, the DNA. We showed you him shutting off his camera. I can't give you any more because he shut off the cameras. We followed the evidence in this case. Murder doesn't make sense, but murder happened. Murder happened November 20th, 2018, in the darkness. And it happened 4 times. There's no way I could justify anything remotely resembling a good reason. But it happened. Talked about timeline, I promise. Just about that. Just want to close the loop with respect to the timeline. Okay, you talked about it, and I think the defense, you know, Ms. Mastalone, I think it was with Lieutenant Petruzella, we created a timeline and all that stuff, and I guess the idea was that, like, the timeline doesn't make sense, or there's not enough time to do this and not enough time to do that. Well, you'll have those timelines and evidence. They've been marked. I think Ms. Wallace then asked some follow-up questions, and we added some things. 3:50 is a phone call, first phone call. 6:05, Keith calls Paul the second time. 1:27 a.m., Paul plugs in his iPhone. Probably just after practicing with the laser light in that other 6 hour. 1:28, goes into the garage, shuts off his camera. We see the Cayenne, see what we would have seen. 1:31, he goes downstairs. Sorry. We see him here, right, and we see the gun locker. He's shutting off the cameras downstairs, making sure that you wouldn't be able to see him leaving the DNA and putting the gun back, swapping the barrel, et cetera, et cetera. And we get to the Porsche, clearly, the Porsche Macan 207, leaving Tilden. 2:27, Porsche Macan, Willowbrook. 2:35, 2:51, the video we saw with the gloves and the hair. 2:52, the first alert from the Verizon, saying basically the Verizon box is not cut yet, but saying that power's cut to the area. Same way that camera, the Nest camera outside, said 2:52, right? Keith sends these text messages, 3:14 through 3:18, there's 4, but the last one says, really, it's not really a communication, it's a text message, but essentially, if you want to look at that as communication, that right here is the last thing that Keith Canaro would ever say. And it's basically telling his brother he's going outside to check on the generator. Little did he know that when he got outside to check the generator, these and this were going to end his life. We know the Verizon line cuts at 3:42 per what they said. So there was also some testimony. I'm not going to belabor it for 6 minutes. There's no question it's enough time. But it could have actually been a little bit before 3:42. I think Mike Abraham said that Verizon pings the box every once in a while. I think he said every 30 seconds. So, I mean, it could have been 30 seconds earlier. Who knows if that's even accurate, if it registers right away. But the line's cut, the fire's set, and then he runs, like, look at the pictures. I mean, I skip the nearest bathroom and I go to the next bathroom. That's probably the distance of me running to get to that car, to get onto Willowbrook at 3:48 and 17 seconds. And then ultimately, 4:08, Porsche Macan returns to Tilton. Paul's iPhone is unplugged, 4:54. The main fire starts at 4:57. Porsche Cayenne pulls out 27:10. I think I skipped it. If I could for 1 second. Apologize. Almost done. Just gonna go to my one slide. I'm gonna take you back for 1 second. Just camera 5. This is when the where the car pulls out, and then we have that garage fire. Can we shut off all the lights? So we know the car pulls out. Mr. Canaro pulls the Cayenne out. About 5 o'clock. Just fast forward, because we know we got about a minute and a half until that fire starts. We're going to let it run now. About 5:51. And just, when I talked earlier, this is that light by the garage. One of like the sconces or wall-mounted lights to the garage. Just in the next little while, just want you to pay a little attention to some movement, some shadows in this area before the flash. Now, we said that the people that were alleged to have been there at 4:30 wouldn't have still been there at 5:02, so you can't really make both arguments. But what we see here is about a minute and 30 seconds after Mr. Canaro pulls the Cayenne out. It's been suggested that like someone else had to be there to set that fire. Now, I'd suggest to you that when you look at that, it's impossible to say that there wasn't someone there, i.e. Mr. Canaro, who came out of the car and went back up there. It would have been as simple as we said, like his family gets in the car, but like the wife went back inside, his daughter was calling 911, I don't know exactly when she got in the car. They all got in the car, there's no doubt about that. But like, what if he just pulls the car out into the street? And then whether the family's there yet or not, if they are, I forgot to shut the garage door. Boom, towards the freaking car. Because that's the car that you just used to kill everybody. Like, obviously, again, kind of a failed attempt at doing any damage to that car, but like, he either set that fire right before he pulled the car out and it just took a minute, or he went back up. I mean, that fire is not started. Because if you're talking about like someone else being there, Corey, whatever, man, if he's not there, he's sitting in the street. It's not like he's not there to see what happened. Like, that fire, ladies and gentlemen, is just another fire set by Mr. Canaro. It's just another part of the entirety of this case. Okay? That video is obviously not clear enough to say conclusively, but I suggest that you see some movement in that area around that light and some shadows, and it just is not something that proves anything like someone else was there. No one told you that anyone was there. Paul Canaro, ladies and gentlemen. Paul Canaro. All of the evidence in this case, all of the ballistics, the DNA, the air ammunition, the hiding of the backpack, the hiding of the barrel, they're all shutting off the cameras. They're all just ways to try to hide the evidence. The evidence that shows that he, and he alone, committed these crimes. You have video of him shutting off his cameras. You have video of him leaving at 2:07 and returning at 4:08. You have evidence to suggest that is certainly him outside of his brother's house. He had the barrel. The projectiles and the bullets from the scene matched the barrel that he separated from the gun and the gun. Sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes the evidence doesn't lie. Sometimes, no matter how hard you try to explain it away or give alternative theories to why his DNA or his wife's, his niece's DNA is in his basement, and why someone would try to frame him but swap out the barrel. He's not the unluckiest man in the world, ladies and gentlemen. He's just guilty. He's just guilty. And that's simple. But one last thing I just really wanted to say, and the judge is going to read the law to you very shortly. He's the one who controls how you consider the facts of this case in relation to the law. And ultimately, he's going to give you, when you deliberate, you're going to get a verdict sheet. And this is just some questions that you're going to have to answer based upon all the time you spent here, all the attention you paid, the arguments of counsel, but most importantly, the evidence from the stand, the physical evidence. And you're going to have to answer some questions. They go a little something like this. I'm not going to read the whole thing, I promise. You're going to have to determine if the defendant is guilty of murder. Did he purposely or knowingly cause the death of Keith Canaro, for instance, or serious bodily injury resulting in death? Okay? That's the determination you need to make with respect to each victim. Then you're going to get some other questions on some of them. Kind of like, did he do it by his own hand? Meaning, did he do it? Okay? And then there's some other questions, like did he do it for money, or with the children? You know, were they under the age of 14? You're gonna answer some of these questions once you find him guilty of murder. And you're gonna get some weapons charges. You're gonna get the theft, you're gonna get the misappropriation. The one thing is, with respect, so you understand, with respect to felony murder. Now, with felony murder, you just get Jesse and Sophia. And I just wanted you to understand that when we talk about felony murder, we talk about causing the death of the victim while in the course of committing a felony. Here, it's charged with the arson. And the reason why you have Sophia and Jesse and not Jennifer and Keith is because of that very fact that we know, based upon the testimony of Dr. Toma and Dr. Zhang, that like Sophia and Jesse were alive after the fire was set. So they were killed in the course of him setting fire to the house. Now, they're also victims of murder because they were purposely or knowingly killed by Mr. Canaro. But I wanted you to understand that is really what we're talking about and why you just see them there as opposed to Keith, their father, and Jennifer, their mother. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that this is an emotional process. Just on behalf of Ms. Wallace, just want you to know that we appreciate the time that you've all devoted to this. I'm sure the defense does too. I'm not trying to grandstand here, but we do appreciate the time, the attention, how you've showed up. Sorry if there were delays at times. Could have been our fault. Who knows? But when we talk about justice and we talk about things like reasonable doubt and presumption of innocence and things like that, just remember that like we get held to a very high standard, and that's the way it should be. Okay, we're the state. We have to prove. We have to convince you that this man committed murders, felony murder, weapons charge. We have to do it beyond a reasonable doubt. And that reasonable word is just kind of important because we have proven it to you beyond a reasonable doubt. The DNA, the ballistics, the cameras, all the other testimony, all the little things, like showing you he wasn't set up, showing you that that was just another way to try to deceive. I would argue to you that the evidence will not deceive you. It will take you to a place where you will go back into that room and you will decide amongst yourselves that this man, contrary to a lot of things you may have heard about him, this man, on November 20th, 2018, Colts Neck, New Jersey, killed his brother, sister-in-law, 11-year-old nephew, and his 8-year-old niece. Ladies and gentlemen, for one final time, we appreciate your time. The only just verdict in this case, the only one that follows the evidence, is that Mr. Canaro is guilty of all these crimes.